Right, I think we might as well get started then. So, welcome to this first quarterly update as part of the ACS Live series. I'm Chris Noyce, Communications Director at ACS. Most of you know me from the last 11 and a half years of being here. I am very pleased to be joined by Sarah, Rosie, and Will, who hopefully you'll have all seen at some point. But if not, I'll go around and do some introductions. So, first of all, Sarah, if you'd like to introduce yourself to anyone who doesn't know who you are.
Well, I'm hoping most people do, since I've been here for quite a lot longer than 11 years. Anyway, I'm Sarah. I'm head of retailer engagement. I look after all retailers and also look after all events.
Excellent. And then going around my screen, Rosie, next up.
Sure, I'm Rosie Wiggins. I have not been here for 11 years. I'm ACS's new research assistant. I've been here just over a month, and I handle all the ACS research and I collect secondary research as well.
Excellent. And last but not least, Will.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, my name's Will. I'm head of supply relations. I think I've been at ACS for about 10 years or so not quite as long as you and Sarah, but yeah, I look after everything to do with suppliers at ACS. So looking forward to this chat.
It's good. I like that you apologise for being here for only 10 years. It's good. Well, it's quite low on the Lowman scale.
Absolutely.
Cool. Right. Well, the point of this ACS Live session is to give you some data from our quarterly research, some secondary data, some things you'll be familiar with, some things you'll have seen in the updates that Rosie's been giving out over the last couple of weeks, but some things are brand new. And we hope that this is useful if you're both a retailer and a supplier. So if you're a retailer, it's a good opportunity to benchmark yourself against some of the other statistics that are in here. And if you're a supplier, hopefully there are some opportunities in here for some things to think about in terms of engagement with other retailers. Let's get started then. And I just want to start off with investment. Obviously, this is a big thing that we've been talking about recently, and something that has been sort of front of mind in the budget in the last couple of weeks. And there's been a real, I guess, drop off in performance of the way the retailers have been doing in terms of sales over the last 6 months, really. So since the end of the first lockdown, there's been a bit more of a struggle in terms of sales, and what we're pleased to announce is that actually that hasn't carried over to a decrease in optimism. And this is, for some reason, this is always the case. Retailers will always report to us that their sales are down, but they will always, and this has been the case since we started doing this 9 years ago, they will always report that they are optimistic about the future. So that's good. And then when we talk about investment specifically, there was a big drop off around the start of 2015, initially on investment. And then we got to a sort of, I hate to use the term new normal, but that's where it looks like we were going to. And then in this most recent quarter, as we look to see more things starting to open up, this roadmap to reopening, retailers being a bit more keen on investing in the future. First question on this, and this is to Rosie. So despite levels of optimism in the sector, and if we look at where investment has been over the last year, this most recent quarter of investment, the December to February, is the lowest it's been all year, and probably the lowest we've had for quite a long time. What are retailers saying about the impact that COVID's having? Because it must be doing something to these investment figures.
So many retailers are saying that while investment this quarter has been low, understandably so, they are already planning for future investments, particularly investing in or refurbishing existing stores. So I expect when things begin to stabilize, hopefully this year, we'll begin to see investment totals rise to match-ish the optimism levels that retailers are reporting around this time.
Yeah, I think that's right. So I mean, we shouldn't underplay the amount of investment that we've had. It's still over £500 million in the last year invested, given that we've had quite difficult circumstances. And Sarah, I know you've been to see some new stores as well. There's still refits and new stores going out there. Are you impressed with what you've been seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's some really tremendous stores coming on. And obviously we've seen some new ones. So the Simply Fresh and Sainsbury's stores, Steve Bassett's down in Southampton, absolutely amazing. And yeah, people are looking to improve their store, especially because I think because they've had quite a good time, which financially, I suppose, I don't want to make light of it, but they have done quite well through the pandemic. So they're now looking of how they can improve their stores to keep the people who've been going to their store. One of the things that they're concerned about is kind of retention of customers, and one of the ways to do that is to improve their stores.
Yeah, and obviously convenience is still a growth area. Otherwise, we wouldn't see Amazon opening now 2 stores in that kind of format.
Absolutely.
When we look into a bit more detail in investment and where that investment's coming from, our Voice of Local Shops data says that 3/4 of investment is funded by retailers themselves, not through banks, not through working with anyone else. That's from their own reserves. Will, question to you: just 5% of that investment is being funded by suppliers. Is that a gap? Is there an opportunity there?
I think historically in the past, yeah, brands have, I suppose, in terms of things like refrigeration, have invested in retailer stores. But I see that more, what brands and suppliers can do more is really invest, maybe not financially, but more of their time or their resources into actually looking at how to improve retailers' business. So more brand collaboration, maybe trying to create more theatre in store, those kind of things, to look at the overall retailer's business and to help them in terms of what they can do to improve their store overall. So maybe not a financial investment, but more time and resources into convenience stores.
And Chris,
that in-store theatre point you make is really interesting. Sorry, Sarah, go on.
I was just going to say, I totally agree with what Will said. And I think retailers in the past have got caught in kind of contracts with suppliers, and that's what they're trying to avoid. So supplier support is always welcome, but they don't want to have to kind of sign on the dotted line to get it. Doing what Will suggested is the way forward. Yeah,
and what Will said about that in-store theatre point is really interesting, because over the last year, a lot of stores have, I guess, felt like they had to be very sterile, very functional, very easy for people to get in and out of, necessarily because of COVID, because of all the social distancing and all that kind of thing. But this year, as we reopen, as we start to get back to normality, I think there's a huge opportunity for stores to focus on in-store theatre, to focus on making shopping fun again, because we just haven't had that over the last year.
Yeah, I totally agree.
One of the areas that we talk about when it comes to investment and changing things in store is the environment and becoming more environmentally friendly. I'll come to you on this first, Sarah. So these figures are about the measures that independent retailers have put into their stores, and there are quite a few that are quite low here. Does this tally with what you're seeing, especially when you go into those newer stores? Are newer stores doing a bit better at having more of a focus on these things?
I think it does reflect it. I mean, the chiller doors is something basically we're seeing in almost all stores now. It's not just because of the environmental impact. It's also because of the general impact of not having to worry about the heating in the rest of the store. So it kind of balances the whole store, not just that one category or one area. And obviously with that, the temperature monitoring systems fit in as well. The one I would think would be coming up is the food refill stations. We're seeing a lot more of that. And in fact, I heard a figure today that said during the pandemic, 45% of people have become more aware of sustainability in the environment. So I think that's going to be the household, the food. I'm not sure about alcohol refill stations. I've only ever seen wine, but maybe that kind of thing is definitely coming up. Shelf edge labels, it doesn't surprise me. I'm not sure they're environmentally friendly. They're definitely time saver. That's kind of stayed always at that level, and I don't, until the price drops quite a lot on the individual labels, I can't see it becoming as prevalent as other things.
Yeah, and well, as we've seen, quite low uptake there on a lot of the refill stations. Obviously, we work with some of the suppliers in the sector through Club and Connect and Premier Club membership that offer these kind of services. What are the barriers to putting this stuff in? Is it just space? Is it the look and feel of the rest of the store? What are you hearing back about retailers being hesitant about these things?
I think, Chris, it's it's about location as well. It's right where the store is. I don't think refill stations on alcohol and food work for every retailer. Again, things like the shopper demographics and the location of the store is quite key there. And also, like you touched on, the space of the store is about a premium. So it's making sure that they don't just put in these solutions for the sake of it, and it's actually creating a purpose and an uplift in sales. So I think that is what is key for retailers to look at it if it's right for their store.
Yeah, I think that's right, isn't it? It can't just be ticking a box. You have to really commit to this. Yeah. And obviously, one of the things on environment that is talked about quite a lot is food waste. And these are some new stats that we've got about how stores are dealing with food waste. One thing that stuck out to me here is that lots of retailers, almost half of retailers, significantly reduce the prices of items when they're getting close to best before dates. But just 7% are using one of the third-party apps like Too Good To Go. We've seen Gander. We've seen a couple of these in showcases recently, Will. How big an opportunity is this? Yeah,
I think it's a massive opportunity for retailers. I think, obviously, those solutions like you touched on, Gander, Too Good To Go, offer a great solution for retailers when it comes to food waste. And also, customers like a bargain, so they know they can go to the store to pick up a good deal. In particular, coming out of COVID, a lot of shoppers are going to look more towards value and are going to budget more, so they want to save some more money. So I think having these solutions for retailers is great for their food waste, but it will also bring more footfall into stores as well. So I think it's a win-win for retailers, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just on the next slide, here we go. So when we asked about retailers that don't use food banks, we asked about why they don't donate expired goods, and so they can reduce waste in other ways. They can put things into soups and sandwiches and that kind of thing. That makes a lot of sense. Stores that don't sell any fresh food is 7%. That feels astonishing that there are any stores like that now. Sarah, can you be a successful convenience store now and not sell fresh food?
Oh yes, definitely. I mean, if you think we cover stores are very small, less than 1,000 square foot. And so, if you're a very small store, that might not be what your demographic wants. They might just want you to be, a kind of a CTA and a chocolate tobacco news. And it might just be that that's not what you fulfill that purpose. And also what you also have to remember with fresh is it's a really difficult category to get right because you've got wastage. And if you're going to do it, you've got to be able to do it well, because nobody wants to go into a store and see a sad apple sitting on a shelf that's been there for a week. You've really got to be able to do it well. And, it doesn't surprise me that there's 7% who don't do it at all.
Yeah, nobody likes a sad apple. I think we can take that one away. And this is a new statue that's in the weekly research update this week that Rosie's has been putting together. It just shows how important food banks are. Obviously, lots of people will know this, but a huge amount of demand for food banks. So if you are a retailer and you are looking at this and thinking, I've got lots of wastage and I don't know what to do with it, then get in touch with the local food banks. I think that is going to be really important. Just want to move on to one of the other things that we've been talking about a lot recently, and that's delivery. There's lots of stats flying around on delivery. These are a couple of things that have come from the local shop report. So in response to COVID, initially in response to that first lockdown, more than half of retailers that we spoke to said they had introduced a delivery service. But then when we surveyed again in September, that had dropped to about 17% that offered this service as a more permanent thing. At the peak, we're talking about 600,000 odd home deliveries a week going out into their communities. Rosie, we've got some additional stats from the latest couple of rounds of Voice Local Shop survey. What's that telling us about deliveries and the different types of delivery that retailers are offering?
So we know that despite the huge swing towards online retail, 92% of independent convenience stores don't have any form of online delivery set up. So it's going to be really interesting to see in future polling whether independents move to platforms like Deliveroo or Snappy Shopper, or whether they continue to stick with more familiar in-store services, and whether online retail continues to see that growth, or if things start to balance out after the pandemic.
Yeah, that is really interesting because on the face of it, you say, right, 92% don't have any form of online delivery setup. But actually, when you talk to a lot of retailers, what they say is, oh, we do this, but people just come in and they say, oh, can you deliver to me that tomorrow? Or they'll phone up and you've got a pen and paper. And it doesn't have to be a very high-tech operation to be effective, especially for lots of these rural and suburban community retailers. So
I totally agree, Chris. I also think that actually some retailers are now looking at the option because, again, as I go back to this kind of retaining customers when we move out of where we are at the moment, is they want to keep those people coming into store. And I think one of them is, at least a few of them I've spoken to recently have started doing delivery options. Just on that slide, actually, one of the other interesting things that I've been discussing with retailers is the placing of plastic screens. So we've been kind of asking the question, will they stay after, restrictions lift? And to be honest, it's about 50-50 at the moment. So I think that will be an interesting thing to keep an eye on.
Yeah, we heard about this earlier in the week at the crime seminar and during the panel there. And I completely get the sort of safety aspect and that additional barrier between customers and colleagues. But as with all these things, additional barriers can create additional complexity. And if you want to be a welcoming store and you want to be doing these tastings and all this kind of thing, then sometimes you want to remove as many barriers between the till point as possible. So yeah, you're right. I think it's going to be really interesting when we get into the summer to see how many of these things stick around. I mean, I am all for social distancing. I mean, I just don't like people, so I'm quite happy to just keep 2 meters away at all times.
And some of those solutions as well, I think for myself, in the future, I don't want to see anything which is related to COVID. So those screens are still in store, and that will just bring it back to bad memories. So I think we get rid of those.
That's it. One of the things on delivery which I thought was really interesting, and this is some secondary research that Rosie pulled together a couple of weeks ago, and this is about minimum spends for delivery. So we know that supermarkets have varying minimum spends for doing deliveries, and that's putting off a lot of people, and it's meaning that elderly people are spending a lot more than they want to. Is this a massive opportunity for convenience stores? Because I don't know. I was speaking to some retailers. They said they don't really have that much of a minimum spend because it's not a huge, it's not a hugely sort of formal business at the moment. But between the people that are offering the service to retailers and the retailers themselves, is this a real gap in the market where independent retailers can serve their communities better?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. It's difficult really, because I suppose the thing with delivery, and especially online delivery, it kind of takes away that element of personalization. You don't really know who the customer is who is ordering. So I think there are certainly opportunities, and I know certain delivery companies, the prices are quite substantial, and it does cost the customer quite a bit to order from them. But I think certainly during COVID, retailers have been pretty good at offering more priority delivery slots for more vulnerable and elderly, and hopefully that's something that can carry on post-COVID as well. They can have some more of those slots. But I think maybe it's about getting a bit more creative and looking at delivery, the data and the sales data behind it, and see which days are kind of underperforming. And maybe they could run a special offer for over 65s where they can reduce minimum spend on that day to pick up more delivery slots and to make it a bit more profitable for the business, and also to help the over 65s and make them feel like they're getting something back as well. So
Yeah,
I like that, a bit of creativity with it. Sarah, sorry, you're about to come in.
I was just going to say, I think there's another thing we need to consider when we're looking at stats like this. I mean, I totally understand it, but what I think we have to remember is that if you think about younger people, they will pay a premium to have a takeaway delivered to them, and they're used to paying for that. They're used to ordering online. They're used to getting delivery, and they don't mind paying the extra charge. I think if you look at the I'm hazarding a guess, but from the people I know who are in that over 60s category, getting a takeaway isn't something they do regularly. So they're not used to that delivery charge. So whereas kind of we would all accept paying a couple of extra pounds to have something delivered, they won't. So I think it's understanding that as well. But I love Will's idea of doing it on, delivering on days that aren't as busy.
Yeah, no, I like that. It's good. And Rosie, one of the things that I was struck by here was about older people being nervous about going into supermarkets. Is this something that we've seen comparing supermarkets to convenience stores and how safe they are, respectively?
I think in terms of public opinion, the more local you can shop, the more safe you are. There's been a huge increase in particularly recent research about what I've seen called the hyperlocal, which is kind of your neighbors and your corner shop rather than your town and supermarket. And that reflects this kind of lasting concern and wariness about going to these really highly populated places.
I haven't been in a supermarket for a year.
I have. It's not particularly fun, I'll be honest with you.
Exactly. That's why I'm not going.
I've been informed that we have a question. We have a question from the audience, which I will get to as we're still talking about delivery. And so the question is from Charlie. He's saying, how do you see the growth of delivery vendors like Deliveroo presenting opportunities for brands in the convenience sector going forward? Now, I guess this is interesting because it talks about not just takeaway goods, but also groceries as well. And we've heard about Deliveroo and others starting up there, not just dark kitchens for takeaways, but dark stores for grocery. Is now the time for convenience stores to be jumping on that and making sure that they're competitive and without being, I guess, wiped out by Deliveroo just monopolising that service? Well, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, I think retailers have to, because like you said, those dark stores, Deliveroo do that already when it comes to their takeaway business, and it's certainly a route they're taking now. So if retailers don't look to jump on board with these solutions, then it's just Deliveroo are just gonna cut out the middleman, which is the retailer, and customers are going to continue to use Deliveroo, and the retailer will be the one that suffers. So they have to really get on board with some of these new ideas. So
yeah, no, it's great. I heard a story from a retailer who was saying that they were doing deliveries and then had a relationship with the takeaway down the road, so that if people were getting their takeaway delivered, they could then get some groceries as well. And it's just that partnership working both ways to support both of those kinds of businesses. I thought was really interesting. So I guess we look out for that a bit more in the future as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that we've some of our retailers have been working with Deliveroo for a long time, supplying alcohol for takeaways like that, and it's been very profitable for them. Yeah,
definitely. I want to spend a little bit of time now talking about mental health, because this is one of the things that has been obviously front of mind for a lot of people during the pandemic, and is something that we should always give time to. It's an extremely important area for retailers, especially those that are running very small businesses. There's a lot of lone working involved, so it's really important that mental health is considered. I was actually really encouraged by these first figures, saying that when we talk to retailers, they say that my job has a positive impact on mental health, and it's pretty overwhelmingly positive on there. I think that is a testament to some of the good things that retailers are doing. Rosie, how does this compare with colleagues in the sector? Obviously, we have a separate survey for colleagues. What are they telling us about how their job affects their mental health?
Colleagues from the survey feel very much the same way. 47% of colleagues say their job has a positive impact on their mental health, and colleagues also overwhelmingly agreed that they felt their jobs were important to their local communities, which I think can be considered a mental health statistic, bearing in mind how important community efforts have been this past year.
Yeah, no, that's really encouraging to hear, and we'll hear more from the colleague survey in the next few weeks as we finish the analysis on that. We had a fantastic response this year, actually, of over 7,500 colleagues in the sector responding on that survey. Sarah, we touched on it a little bit earlier about the crime seminar that we had earlier this week, and some of the negative things that retailers have to deal with. In your experience, talking to retailers as you do all the time, apart from getting you to do everything for them, what's the best part about being a convenience retailer?
I think it's something, it's a job that you only do if you enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, you get out of it, because it's long hours, and it's, you know, as we know from the crime survey, you know, you can get a lot of hassle. But I think they love being part of their community. They love talking to customers, and they love the business. They love how it runs. I think one of the things that's interesting about this slide is that when COVID hit, a lot of our retailers just didn't put their head above water for months, and they didn't actually realise quite how stressed and how difficult it was. I mean, they understood how difficult it was. They didn't kind of understand that until the end. And I've spoken to some recently who said, you know, we were actually relying on our retailer friends, so our support WhatsApp group, because they understood what we were going through. You know, our families didn't, but our other retailer colleagues did. So I think that's really interesting. And the other thing is, for some retailers, actually, their life hasn't changed that much. So they're going into store, they're dealing with customers, they're dealing with everything that they were doing day to day. Obviously, you know, they're not seeing their families as the same as all of us. But, you know, I went from being in the office and running events to being in my office, in my house, and not moving. Whereas a lot of those people, you know, they've been getting out and about and seeing people. So I think that's one of the things that has made it easier in terms of mental health, is they've been able to connect to people, you know, they've been able to continue. Yeah,
and looking at this slide now, Rosie, we're seeing that people are saying that the second lockdown, this most recent lockdown, was it second, third? Which lockdown are we on?
It was a combination of two. This came out, I believe, at the end of February, the statistics. So it will be the first lockdown and 2 more lockdowns.
So yeah, so whichever lockdown we're in now is harder than the first one that we're in. Is there a sense of why that's the case?
By the later lockdowns, there was a much bigger melting pot of contributing factors to this kind of lockdown fatigue. You know, unemployment was rising. By this point, many people hadn't been able to get to their families for the holidays. Trust in government guidance and trust in media guidance was falling. But hopefully, public opinion polling is now showing that people are starting to get more optimism now that the roadmap has been released, and it looks like things are relatively stable for the immediate future.
Yeah, I guess with the sort of sense that it was a bit novel the first time around as well.
Definitely.
And that, you know, the first time you stand in front of Loggers Leap at Thorpe Park and get drenched, sort of quite fun. But if you stand there all day, it sucks really. So I think we're at the point now where it's at the end of the day and we've been standing there getting drenched all day.
Yeah, there's only so much banana bread you can make in a year, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly right. And you know, this just exemplifies what you were saying a little bit earlier, Sarah, that you know, lots of retailers have said that their mental health over the last year has probably gotten worse, if anything, and that's just because of, you know, all the challenges that everyone else has been facing.
Yeah.
Let's end on a positive note, though. Sorry, go on, Sarah.
I was just going to say on that one.
Let's go back to that.
Yeah, sorry. We do need to still recognise that there are colleagues and people who need support. And I just want to put a shout out to Grocery Aid, who really they're brilliant. They're brilliant all the time. But they run a helpline that Vicky's going to put on the chat box now, the phone number. And it's about signposting, so people need to know where to go to get the information. And my one tip would be go to Grocery Aid first.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. Grocery Aid Day was just a couple of weeks ago as well. There are all sorts of support services available for retailers, and you know, we had someone from Grocery Aid talk on one of our updates a couple of weeks ago, and they're saying that, you know, oftentimes people just phone up for a chat, and it could be, you know, an hour on the phone, but that makes a huge difference to people. You know, people that, like, as you say, otherwise haven't had any interaction really. So let's just finish up then with some potential opportunities, and this, it fascinates me. I love the idea of just being able to put everyone in a box. So here we have five consumer tribes, as we're calling them, that are going to define the recovery. please feel free to let us know which one you feel like you fit into. I'll be honest with you, I think for the most part, people will be somewhere sensible in the middle, but I can only imagine when the pubs reopen, after a couple of pints, there will be some serious revenge spending. There'll be shots all the way down the bar. So we're sort of looking forward to that. But Rosie, where has this come from? Is this all of retailers at convenience specific? How's this come about?
It's a pretty broad trend across all kind of retail. A lot of data now is showing that wealth gaps have increased across the pandemic, and those who already experienced some kind of economic disadvantage tended to be hit harder by things like lockdown and unemployment and things like that, which goes some way to explaining the vast difference in some of these tribes, with people either kind of looking to celebrate or preparing for even worse potentially to come. But yes, this is a pretty broad trend across all of retail, with lots of conversations about the tourism industry and the hospitality industry in particular. But there is plenty of opportunities that convenience stores can seize here.
Yeah, and Will, one of the things that stands out to me straight away when we talk about those rewarders, those revenge spenders, is premiumization and the opportunities for premiumization. How can suppliers get involved and support retailers in making sure that they've got enough on the shelves and enough difference on the shelves to make the most of these new groups?
Yeah, I think this graph is fascinating, and yeah, like you touched on, premiumization is key for retailers and having that availability in store. I think though, like looking at offering a point of difference, I think online, obviously the weekly big shop is here to stay online, so making sure there's a point of difference, maybe using more local suppliers and some more of those premium ranges to make sure that people will come into store because you are offering something different. I think me personally, when I go to a convenience store, I go to a convenience store to top up on beer, and because they sell beer and chillers, which is a simple solution, but supermarkets don't do that. So just having cold beers takes me to the convenience store a couple of times a week, and then I end up buying other things that I don't need as well because they're on promotion. So I think looking for suppliers, it's looking at retailers' range, making sure the core range is right, because obviously they want to capitalize on these revenge spenders, but they also need to look at the other groups in this chart as well and make sure they offer value still, but also have that point of difference when it comes to things like premiumization. Yeah,
it's a really good point actually, because while I quite like the term revenge spenders, those who are rationing and recovering are a much bigger segment. And making sure the value is there is still got to be absolutely front and center, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's as well like MPD, promotions in store, again touching a bit more on that theatre, but suppliers can look at having more of a convenience-led strategy when it comes to some of these things, especially MPD and those. So I think having those kind of points of difference, like I said, to encourage shoppers into store is crucial.
Yeah, absolutely right.
There are two things I would say on this. One is to not forget, as Will said, that there are still going to be those people who need the food banks, they need the reductions, and so let's not forget we'll still need those. But also I think it's a good time to kind of celebrate a little bit, and this is going back to what we said before about in-store theatre. Maybe convenience stores can do some cross promotions, celebrating having outdoor gatherings, obviously within the right rules and everything, but kind of putting that back into store. Come back into store, we've got everything you need for your your little garden party you can have with your 6 friends. I think there's a way of celebrating, bringing fun back into shopping, but still keeping within the regulations that we have to, because obviously I don't want anybody breaking the law and having 7 people in their garden.
Yeah, that in itself is a really interesting point, isn't it? Because I'm sure this is already happening. I apologise, I haven't seen it already. But when we're thinking about ranging in the next few months, and we're thinking about offers, that should be tailored to outdoor gatherings of 6 people, shouldn't it? That should be, you're thinking, you're not going to be selling many packs of 4 sausages, but you'll probably sell quite a few packs of 12. So that kind of thing. Because no one wants just one sausage on a barbecue. That's just miserable. So
almost as sad as an apple on a
almost as sad as a sad apple. Yeah. So thinking about that ranging, thinking about those opportunities, and I think what are we? June 21st is the end date. So
Yes.
what's that? So, I mean, that's leading right up into Wimbledon, isn't it? So
it's
that'll
also
be
Midsummer's Day.
Oh, it's the solstice. It is, yeah, of course, yeah. So, you know, lots of things to look forward to there. That's everything from this session. Any questions about any of the research that we've presented throughout this, please contact Rosie. She is our research expert. And the final thing I just want to leave you with is a shameless plug for our conference. You've heard Sarah talking about some of the ways that retailers can recover from the pandemic, how we retain the customers that we've gained, and how eventually in the long term we can reimagine what stores look like. So please make sure you book for Summit. Speak to Vicky or Sarah. We're just a few weeks away from Summit now. Fantastic list of sponsors and speakers. So go to the website for more information on that. And all that's left for me to do is to thank Sarah, Will, and Rosie for joining me in this session. And we'll be back in this format in about 3 months' time. But ACS Live, of course, will continue to roll on and speak to Sarah and Vicky for more details. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.